This is Andy Purewal for ID Boxing. I'm joined by Sean Gibbons here in Nottingham. Sean, always a pleasure to see you. I appreciate you giving me some time this evening. How are you finding Nottingham?
Finding it lovely, beautiful city, a lot of history here. I have not found Robin Hood. That's a big myth from the United States, but I do believe he's somewhere out here in Sherwood Forest. I just haven't had a chance to get there.
He's hiding from Bronco.
You know what? He'd be a smart man if he is. And I think Josh Warrington should, Leigh Wood should take notes there from Robin Hood too and head out to the forest. But you know what? I take my hat off to Leigh Wood. He accepted this challenge. He saw what he did with Josh Warrington, and Leigh Wood wants to fight the best, and that's what it's going to be tomorrow night. Going to be a real exciting evening.
I know obviously you're representing Bronco, Sean, but on the Leigh Wood front, how much credit does he deserve for taking this challenge? Because it's a huge risk. Everybody sees this as a 50-50 fight, and one which we've seen how devastating Lara can be with British fighters alone. We saw him with Josh Warrington. So on the Leigh Wood front, how much credit does he deserve for taking on this challenge?
Yeah, like I just said a minute ago, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit. But when you want to hit that greatness, you could fight a Kiko Martinez, you could fight another regional type of guy, but he wants to fight one of the best and a guy that's been to England in Lara, and people have seen what he did. So he wants to step up, see how he can do, and he wants big fights because at this level where he's at 34 years old, I don't think he can get up for some of these small ones. He wants to give the fans the biggest and best fights, and that's what we're getting Saturday night.
We've seen very heated build-ups with Bronco over here with Josh Warrington and now with Leigh Wood. How would you compare them from what you've seen and how Bronco's approached them?
Well, Bronco's approach is always the same. He just gets in the best shape he can in his life. He has one style, one gear, and that's called excitement. Difference with Leigh Wood, Leigh can go right, left a little. He's more of a pure boxer. He doesn't lead with his head. He comes to fight more with his fist. Unfortunately, Josh Warrington thinks the head is a fist, and that's the way he fights his fights. You know what I'm saying? He should have a third glove in that fight, and it should be on his head. So Leigh Wood, all credit again, man. The dude's going to come. He's going to come with two hands, not three like Josh Warrington, and he's going to come to throw down and give it his best, especially here in his hometown of Nottingham.
Everybody's expecting fireworks from the get-go tomorrow night, Sean. Are you the same? Are you expecting this one to catch fire instantly?
I do. I think there won't be a lot of filling out process. I think it could be scary early for Leigh Wood. As the fight warms up, I think Leigh has a better chance as the fight goes on. But I still think Bronco is just more powerful, more polished, more hungry, 24 years old, hasn't had those moments yet that Leigh Wood has had. So I'm kind of looking, hopefully, maybe it could go quick or it could be towards the end, like a late round stoppage.
Sean, whenever you come over and you've got a fighter with you, that usually means trouble, especially for the British guys. When you first started working with Bronco, what in particular was it about him that stood out to you, that made you think there's something special there?
Well, I saw him early on with some Filipino fighters, actually, and it's on YouTube. He hit this one Filipino that had never been stopped before and just wrecked this guy in 5 rounds. And it's like, when you see him, what's not to like? Stylistically wise, he puts on a fun fight every time he's in the ring, and just the person he was and the way he fought is what really turned me onto him. Similar to Isaac Cruz, they're both very similar. They're both from Mexico City. They fight in the smaller weights, but they bring excitement to everything they do. They, people want to see them. They're fan-friendly fighters.
Obviously looking towards the future, and just say if Mauricio gets his hand raised tomorrow night, the Josh Warrington trilogy fight, I know it's something which has been spoken about a long time. Mauricio said he wants to end the career of Josh Warrington. Are you confident that if he comes through as the new WBA world champion, the trilogy bout will be presented to him and he can end that rivalry once and for all?
Yeah, I think somewhere, if it's not the next fight, the fight after, I think it's definitely something that needs closure. And I think it will happen, but I think a guy like Bronco, if he is successful on Saturday night, have a voluntary type defense, and then gear up for another fight with Josh Warrington, and hope let's hope that the third one goes clean, so we can just put this thing to bed and be done with it.
With Josh, people have kind of started questioning the use of his head in his most recent fights, and we saw against Luis Alberto Lopez, a cut early in that fight. Is that still a concern for Bronco? Does he look back to obviously what we saw in the second fight? Does he ever mention how dirty he sees Josh as a fighter?
Yeah, I mean, like going in the second fight in the dressing room, he absolutely kept telling the referee the head, the head, the head. And I don't know if it was bad karma, bad luck, or whatever, what happened, boom, the head. So it's always going to be a concern. If you go and look at Warrington fights, look at Kiko Martinez. Guy looked like he went through a meat grinder. And I don't think that was from the two hands. There was a lot of headbutts in there. So I'm just saying, it's like the proof's in the pudding. There's something going on here. You know what I mean? If all these guys are banged up and the head's running, that's something that's going to be a big concern. But at the end of the day, if that's the fight that the people want to see one more time, then it'll come together.
Moving away from that one, you mentioned a certain Isaac Cruz. We're waiting for news on his next outing. His name really rose up in stock after that Gervonta Davis loss, and everybody's excited to see him return to the ring. Everybody believes he deserves another big fight. So what are you working on in the background?
Yeah, at the moment for Isaac Cruz, we're looking for him to return in May. We were hoping that Devin Haney would move up to 140 and open up the belts for everybody, because a must-see fight will be Isaac Cruz and Gustavo Limos. That could be for the IBF title. You got William Cepeda, who's in the BC, Angel Fierro. There's so many great fights that can be made, but for now we just have to find a real good, solid fight for him in May, and then look at what the situation after Haney fights Lomachenko.
Who do you see as a potential opponent then for May, or could you list a few if you don't want to give a certain name away?
The crazy thing is there's really nobody right this moment. We're just going through guys. But it's funny because this is the hard one. I know what's going to happen the next one and the next one. The winner of Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis. That is the real fight for Pitbull. And in the meantime, while you wait for the winner of that and you see what, everything lays out, IBF title, WBC title, WBO title. One of those titles, and it sets up a perfect rematch with the winner of Gervonta and Ryan, either a rematch with Gervonta or a fresh fight with Ryan Garcia. So Isak's in a great position. He just needs to come back, have a good, solid win, and then everything is easy after that.
Sean, I know you're not involved with either Ryan or Gervonta, but just given how big of a fight that can be and how close the reports tell us that it is, are you confident we see that fight next still?
Yeah, from everything I'm reading, hearing, talking to people in the business, I think it's happening. It's happening in April, and thank goodness, man. Boxing needs fights like this. They need big events, something that the fans on all sides from everywhere can really get into. And it's again, as a matchmaker, I tell people fights that I get excited for and that I would buy a ticket to and stuff. That's that type of fight. Gervonta comes off like Mike Tyson-esque with with his explosiveness. You don't know what you're getting. He's just like a kind of a loose cannon type of guy, but a fun guy in the ring. Ryan brings like an Oscar De La Hoya, tall, stand-up type of style. But at the end of the day, I think Gervonta's explosiveness, his ring IQ, he's a very smart fighter. I think that's going to be the difference. But until it ends, and whenever it ends, it is well worth. It's definitely worth the fight fans' money.
100%. I don't think anybody will disagree with that view, Sean. Moving forwards, though, sticking with your fighters, Mark Magsayo, Brandon Figueroa, terrific fight come March. So about how important of a fight this is though for Mark to really re-establish himself back at the top of the division.
Really, it's everything. Boxing's great because you can be on the top and you lose in a close decision, and then you're just like floating around in purgatory. And with all the different stuff that was going on with Fulton talking about going to 26 and fighting at that weight, and Mark was like, well, what are we going to do? Maybe go to 30. And it was a blessing that Ray Vargas took the Shaky Foster. Now, it's no easy fight by any means, and we're actually about a 2-1 underdog. But this can establish Mark right back at the top, beating Figueroa, beating him convincingly, opens up the real fight that he's always wanted with Leo Santa Cruz. So, like I said, March 4th, not an easy night, but Mark's athleticism, his boxing, his a little better ring generalship than Brandon, I'm hoping will be the difference. And then it puts Mark right back from the outhouse to the penthouse in one night. And that's why I like boxing, because you get knocked down, you lose your belt, whatever, but it only takes one fight to get right back to that level of where you've been.
Final one before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, your Friday evening here in
Yes.
Nottingham too,
I will
Sean.
do that too.
I hope you do. Have you got what have you got planned?
If I tell everybody I walked around here a bit, there's quite a few lovely pubs. I'm going to have to partake in a few pints, but yeah, it looks like a lovely, lovely city.
It sounds like a good evening, Sean. But before I let you go, obviously, Senator Pacquiao, a lot of talk at the minute about him potentially returning to face Conor Benn. You're here at a Matchroom show. I don't know if it's come up with discussions at all with Eddie this week. Can you talk to me about that? Obviously, it's been a very controversial topic, anything to do with Conor Benn currently. So, what have the talks been like between the two parties? Obviously, yourself and representing Manny Pacquiao, and on the Conor Benn front and Bertie.
Yeah, really, there was a mention of it. And Manny is looking, of course, to return to the ring in exhibitions or real fights. But the consensus between all parties is until Conor Benn gets a green light from the WBC or whatever party is overseeing this investigation on the suspension, until he's completely cleared, nobody really wants to talk about it. But yeah, there's a potential for sure if Conor Benn's cleared. If not, we would have loved to have fought Kell Brook, who I see is talking about wanting to do one more. And in general, Manny is happy. He wants to do some exhibitions. He still feels like he has stuff for the fans. You know what I mean? Like he's coming here to England to do a 3-city tour, a big autograph thing and stuff. So whatever it may be, whatever comes of it, I see him doing a little boxing like he did in Korea in December. So, but on the Conor Benn subject, there has to be some kind of closure on this whole issue with the positive test he had, and once that's done, then absolutely a lot of discussions can happen.
On that note, then, is it? I don't imagine it being a exhibition, sorry, by any stretch of the imagination. I imagine if that was to happen, it would be a registered contest and one which would go on the records of both fighters. Is it something that you've spoken to Manny about? Manny's open to, even though there's a big age difference, and despite his time out of the ring, Conor would be looking to come back as a young, hungry fighter, setting his eyes on the top of the welterweight division.
Right. Really, we haven't talked to Manny until the guy's clean or clear or whatever it may be, because there's nothing really to talk about. We did talk to him about Kell Brook, and he was happy and excited to come back and fight Kell Brook. So, if a Conor Benn couldn't get cleared and there was some way to do a Kell Brook, I think that's a fun fight. I think both of them have great names. They both former champions. They put in their time, and I think it's still a fight that the fight fans would like to see. So, that's kind of the only discussions were more on Kell Brook, which Manny was okay with, and then if Conor Benn gets cleared, then we'll have a discussion about that.
When would you like to have something in place by, if Manny's to return to the ring?
You know what? You'd like to return to the ring by June. You know, I mean, Manny's somewhat retired. Exhibitions and all that he can do for a few years, but he still only has a short window. He's 44 years old. He'll be 44 and a half really in June. So to go at the highest level and fight the real fighters, he's going to have to do that pretty soon. So you'd hope to see him in the ring in June doing something.
From what you're saying then, Sean, would you say the Kell Brook fight is more of a priority at this moment in time instead of Conor Benn?
You know what? None of them are really priority. If a fight presents itself and it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, Manny will just keep plugging along, do some exhibitions, do some, do whatever he does. But at his age, he's just looking to compete still. But nothing really, if a good opportunity presents itself, great. If not, it doesn't. He's done it all in 27 years. So really, fighting and doing it still is just because he wants something to do. You know what I mean? He still feels he can do it at the highest level, and that's what he's done his whole life, and he still has time to do it. So that's why he really wants to get back in there. But there's no one that we're really prioritizing. If something makes sense and I present it to him, then he would take a look at it.
Obviously, after what will be 2 years out of the ring come the summertime, Sean, is he confident that if he did return, no matter who it's against certainly a world level welterweight, or maybe even going slightly higher in weight, that he can produce a performance and roll back the years beyond what we saw of your Denis Ugas bout?
Yeah, I think he still can, and Ugas' fight was just a horrible style at the last minute. You can make an argument Manny pulled that fight out 7-5, 6-6, whatever. but he still competed at 42 at the absolute highest level with the worst possible style, like an octopus, long arms, whatever. So Manny has never stopped training. He plays basketball constantly. He's like a Roy Jones, like a Bernard Hopkins, like a guys that can, Tom Brady in football, guys that can do it into their middle 40s or late 40s because they're guys that come around once in a generation. So he can still compete with anybody at his age.
Right, Sean, we will leave it there now because I'm sure those pubs are calling your name. So I appreciate it. Sean, a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.